Hey there, how's it going? So, the topic today is what I call CSI, constant self-improvement. I've used this for must be 10 years, easy, maybe longer. But I used it in one sense of life, and then I kind of tried to carry it over in everywhere else as much as I could. So it evolved, and I adopted it more for sport way back then, and it dawned on me one day to start adopting it to other my pillars in life, So I'd use it in a sports setting, constant self-improvement, because in my opinion, it was required to track and get better at the sport that you were playing. And you'd adapt it into your training, adapt it into your practicing skills, strategies, whether it was a team environment or an individual sport. It had a lot of real good benefits to motivate myself. And then when I was coaching others, it'd be a nice way to frame something. So what I thought I'd do is I'd break down as normal the words themselves and what they, in this framework, mean to me. So constant self-improvement. So we've got constant. So constant triggers for me consistency. And with consistency, you get focus. With focus, there's this discipline. Then with discipline, there's a word I don't use often. There's, I guess over time, there's sacrifice. I don't usually add that word in, but it can be handy sometimes. So consistency, focus, discipline, and sacrifices. Just a few narratives I throw out there. With the constant, what constant allows for. Other ones can come to mind right now. Measurement. Evidence. I guess you can have that in all of the, but with constant measurement, historic data. So with that, consistency, focus, discipline, sacrifice, it benefits from measurement, evidence, and you get historic data, right? Which comes out of constant. So we have the constant. Now we move on to self. Now self is my go-to. I've been considered quite selfish from an outside perspective, and I'm okay with that. So when I go self, we can go straight away to health and well-being. The well-being piece, health. Health has its layers on it: mental health, physical fitness, nutrition, all those pieces to it when you talk self. And the key to the self piece that I always suggest is more. I've got a phrase here: the more I improve, the more I can influence others. I always found it difficult to speak or be confident with other people if I've not demonstrated some tangible experience that I can at least speak on to give myself some type of authority to speak on it. You know, and why I mean tangible is like, what's an example? Just because you're wearing an All Black doesn't mean you can't coach an All Black or influence an All Black or a great athlete or something like that. Just because you weren't a great athlete, but you can influence it by showing other parts of the traits you're trying to share, trying to instill, that you've demonstrated in other areas of your life. So that's what I mean by that. But when I talk about influencing others, I use influence rather than help or support others, because that's not a given, and it's not the reason. It's a motivator, but it's still not the reason. It's still self first. But as a byproduct of that, everybody else around me is better. Especially when you start working on the pillars in your life that are emotional or relationship based, or focus driven, and have sacrifice in them and have the discipline in them. They tend to be seen by others. They're role model style, right? So that's why I say self-improvement. I guess it's another way of reducing blame. If I want to use self, I consider in a game of something, a team sport, and I can say, well, my teammate did this, my teammate did that, he did that, and that's why we lost, or that's why we didn't do so well, right? We can do that all day. But when I always use self, that's not part of the narrative. So it pulls me out of that mindset of blaming others, of wanting others to do other things. I can influence, I can share, I can suggest. I'm still annoyed. I've still got the other emotions mixed in with it. But bringing myself back to self tends to give me a mindset. What more can I do? What more can I do in this situation? Did I Did I train enough? Did I pass instead of shoot? Did I shoot instead of pass? Did I make the right choices? Analyze my choices. And, did I drop the ball a couple of times? And that's genuinely a better road to go down. So self, that's how I view that word. And then the improvement, constant self-improvement. So improvement for me, if we narrowed it down, I've got positive, it has learning, it has some success, and ultimately it can lead to greatness. And each one of those words there, it kind of elevated it a little bit further. And if I look at my last word, greatness, that's how I frame greatness. It's from constant self-improvement. It's the journey. It's the journey to greatness. And in my opinion, that always leads to change. It helps with discipline. It helps with all the other words, but change instinctively from constant self-improvement. Change is just part of the process. And as I've talked about change before, change is uncomfortable. Change can be painful. Change can be all sorts of emotional feelings can come from change. Constant self-improvement kind of requires it. It's just part of the process. And so that those narratives can help motivate and positively influence me towards sticking with some of the things I said I'd do, sticking with the planning, learning, continuing to practice. That's a good one. Practice. That's not in there. Practice. You got the doing. You got to do or not do. Did a bit of that, right? So those are quick frameworks of how CSI, constant self-improvement, plays a part in my tool set of mental frames that I use to think about things and help recharge me and motivate me to push my boundaries and push my uncomfortable moments and understand why I'm doing it. So constant self-improvement does bring you to some whys. It challenges you to question some whys. So there's plenty of whys in there. Because when you're going through a relatively structured way, whys are a good question, and CSI brings those whys into the front. At some point, you keep pushing towards that. What I love about it is generally based on the data and the evidence and the historic information that I have about myself. they self-fuel the why in most areas. So yeah, that's constant self-improvement from an aspect point of view, and those are the processes I go down. And so so maybe I'll tap into the why a little bit further while I'm here. So using a constant self-improvement mindset, here's an example. Constant self-improvement. I got a structured day, and where I've got a general routine that I've sort of mapped out over the last couple of weeks, right? And when you start using words like focus and even the words like discipline, you can decide this block of time is for that. And with focus and discipline, you can decide, well, that block of time is that, and that's it. Can't be. And then you have real life in between. When you've got certain pillars and balls in the air. So you do have, so let's say you have a career that requires quite a bit of time to do the projects or the tasks or the function or the doing of that role for how it's framed, right? There's a chunk of time in there. And there's a chunk of time required for health, for well-being, for relationships. They've all got time things next to them, correct? So when we know this, when I know everything I want to do or choose, want to make a choice, there's a chunk of time that I'm pulling from a piece of some other time. So you're prioritizing, you're layering, that sort of stuff. So there's the why do that versus that, correct? And so I went through a process of reducing everything down, because once I went down this road, probably about 8 years ago, I started going, well, here I am doing this. Consciously deciding I need to get out of that because I need to do that. But I like doing this. I'm good at this. You know, I'm good at a lot of things that people benefit from. But is that what I want to do every day? Because I like it. But I'm not working on other areas of myself within that. There's a bit of change of routine, change of mindset created this change of prioritization. If you don't have prioritization, there isn't one. You just get up today and you go, oh, well, I'll play video games all day because that's what was in front of me. That's what my mind said straight away. 10 days of that, and you're going, oh, well, it was 10 days of that. If you think about it, if you don't think about the 10 days, then it's another day tomorrow of playing video games, right? As an example. So I had to reduce myself down to what are the most important things, where are the clean parts in it, and then built the pillars up from there in its own, and so it shaped itself over time. So now that and then once you have a structure like that, where you might be, as I've laid out, but I do it quickly. I get up, I exercise, I journal. I do some tasks. I do projects. I chill out a little bit. I talk to my wife. I talk to my kids. I get involved with my parents. I talk to my brother. All sort of sprinkled amongst a day, a week, and a month. So it's all in there, right? It's parts that I've told myself that I want to do. So when you have a structure like that, and it's progressive, and you're taking responsibility for what you're doing, and you're looking at that, you're enjoying that, and that's changing, that's improving, that's enjoying the processes of all those things. At some point, there's something will come up, and you might question why. Why do I do that? Why would I do that? And that's a good space to be in my opinion. So as an example, I used to coach a lot, coach sport, but that took a lot of time. And coaching was fantastic for me because it motivated me to work on myself in a weird way. When I coached, I talk it, I go home and go, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you get fitter? Why don't you get stronger? Why don't you get, or at least maintain? It would help fuel me to get up again, because I'd be suggesting for these guys to do that. And I like to show that I can do it too. Or I've got the struggle of doing this workout as well. I'm struggling as well. So that when they see struggle, they struggle and know it's part of the process, right? That was where I'd come from with that. But that would take a chunk of time. And then you'd get a new group of guys, or a new person, and you go from the beginning through it again. And my logic there would be, is that, well, I'm not, from that self thing, that selfish part, I'm not gaining a lot from this process. And yet it's taking the same chunk of time to go through this, where that chunk of time for that, I would have, or potentially have worked on something else. I would have kept some of these other things pushing forward and challenging myself, right? Those typical conversations with here from projects or success I've had in the past, they're not as difficult anymore. They're just a conversation for me. Yet for others, they could seem very difficult. You know what I'm saying? So then how do I have a difficult conversation? How do I grow? How do I improve? And that's my why question. Then why do it? Oh, because it benefits that person over there. Remember, I've got the self first. I have to prove, I have to have evidence to show that it's self-improving. Now, doing the same thing every week with different guys, even though it might be motivating, encouraging, and supporting them, I've got to find somewhere in that it's self-improving myself. You with me? I could say, well, it's just a place to go and chill, and I enjoy it, and I get I get to talk to other people and make new friends and all that sort of stuff. I can use that narrative for my whys, but I've got lots of friends. I could continue to make more friends. But there is times where you flip it and say, well, I'm doing that instead of playing video games, instead of mucking around with something else. And so if you are time slotting it and reflecting on the time slot, and it's in this sort of area, which is the key. It's more about the where is it sitting in the month, the weeks of your time slots, and then how much is it occupying your mental state and your mental distractions. Is it providing more of a distraction, or is it supporting some of your other pillars? You know, if I go out there and play a sport, you say, well, that's wasting your time. You already know you're playing it the same way. But if it's having a release for me, if it's getting out something out of my system regularly, then I'll argue that that's worthwhile. But I would argue not if you're 7 days a week at it, 3 hours a day. Well, that's the release part. How much more did you need to release? How much more did you? So it's just that. It's a bit like, you got to socialize and hang out with some friends, but you're doing it 4 nights a week till 2 a.m. That's impacting on other areas. It's impacting on your sleep. It's impacting on your cognitive stuff the next day. You got to say to yourself, come on. That's kind of where I'm at, but maybe on a more of a purposeful way of viewing it. So that's that's sort of an insight of how I think about some of the whys, some of the ways I think before I take on a project or take on something that's a little bit further, because I have a tendency it'll grow out of control. I'm down there 10, I'll be coaching 6 days a week, before I know it, 3 times a day, and I don't like backing out. So I have to be having this mindset of self first. Means that when I am doing these pieces, I'm more involved with it. I'm mentally and physically there, but I'm accountable for that time. Which makes the whole thing heightened with accountability, with expectation, right? I'm here for a reason. I'm here for purpose. Even if it's just to muck around, well, I'm mucking around, So so I actually had one of those today. I'm going to go coaching at 10 o'clock. Group of guys. So that I've already planned for that. I've already trained. I've already exercised, and I've moved into it and consciously and purposefully have that slot of time there that I've decided to do. And so I have a plan when I go there. I usually do anyway, but I have a real narrow directive to push and influence what I have to say. So yeah. So that's constant self-improvement, what I think it means to me.